Right, so get ready because this deep dive is going to be, well, a little darker than what we usually do.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. We're going to be checking out a first-person account, a story called My Dog's Return. And let me tell you, it's going to stick with you. It really kind of messes with the whole idea of what's real and what's, like a nightmare.
Mm.
It makes you wonder, what would you do if you were in this situation?
Yeah, I think what gets me about this one is it really makes you face some pretty heavy stuff about loss,
What?
about whether someone's really sane or not, and even about, like, is there something else out there? Something we don't understand.
Right from the beginning, you get sucked into the narrator's life. And this guy's dealt with a lot of loss. First his parents, and then his dog Apollo, who was like his only family left.
And they really hammer home how close he was to that dog.
Oh,
He
absolutely.
even calls Apollo his family. That's way more than just a regular pet, right?
Yeah, it's like they were everything to each other. So when Apollo dies, man, you can just feel how much it crushes the narrator. It's like this huge hole gets ripped in his life. And then he starts having these crazy, vivid dreams, like super intense dreams where he's back with Apollo and his parents. Everything's perfect, like a little too perfect almost.
Those dreams are interesting. Do you think the author's doing that on purpose? Like giving the narrator exactly what he wants, but only when he's asleep?
Oh, for sure. It's like this cruel trick, right? He gets all this happiness and then bam, he wakes up and it's all gone. Got to mess with your head.
Big time.
And that's when things start getting really creepy. The narrator starts hearing all these weird sounds at night, like a chuffing sound, then nails tapping on the hardwood floor.
Ugh, just thinking about it.
It's subtle, but it gets under your skin like something's not right.
Totally. It's like the author's turning up the tension little by little. Makes you wonder what's coming next.
And then it hits you. The narrator finds signs that someone's been in his house. There's slobber, things have been moved, and then he finds human feces. I mean, that's messed up.
Yeah. Makes you think, like, okay, maybe a dog got in, but then that detail, it just throws everything off.
Right. It's like the author's saying, nope, think again, this is something else.
It really makes you question everything, like, what's really going on here?
And then finally, he comes face to face with the intruder. And it's not what you'd expect. He sees this man crawling around on all fours, wearing the rotting skull of his dog, Apollo. He even has this, like, stapled-on tail. It's just horrifying.
Ugh, that image, it's like it hits this primal fear button in your brain.
Definitely. And get this, the guy's acting like a dog, too. Panting, sniffing, even barking.
Whoa! There's so much going on there. Like, is this the narrator's grief coming out in some twisted way, or is this intruder, like, really messed up in the head?
It makes you wonder, is any of this real? Or is he losing it?
Yeah, the story doesn't give you any easy answers. It's all about keeping you guessing, making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got this heavy grief, these creepy events, and now this terrifying encounter. What's it all mean? Is this a story about losing your mind from sadness? Or is there something even darker going on?
I think it's all of that. It's about the dark stuff that can happen inside us and about how there might be things out there that we just don't get, Like things beyond our understanding.
It's crazy how the author, like, really builds the suspense in this story. Like those little things, the chuffing sounds, the tapping on the floor.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like textbook how to use sensory details to get under the reader's skin.
Yeah.
You're right there with the narrator, like feeling that creepiness,
And then when he finally sees the intruder, it's just, I don't know, so messed up. It's not even just the skull. It's how he acts, how he moves.
There's this term in psychology, it's called zoomorphism. Basically, it's when you give human qualities to animals. And this story, it's like a really, really messed up example of that. It's like blurring the lines between what's human and what's animal, which I think really gets to us on some deep level.
It makes you wonder, like, why did the author create such a freaky character? What's he supposed to represent in the story?
That's a good question. It could be that he's like a symbol of what's going on inside the narrator's head, all that grief, the guilt, the confusion. Maybe it's all coming out in this like monster form.
So you're saying the intruder might not even be real, like he's just a figment of the narrator's imagination.
It could be. And remember, the police, they can't find any trace of this guy. No one matching his description. So maybe he only exists in the narrator's mind.
Wow. So then the story's really about the difference between what's actually real and what someone believes is real.
Right. It makes you think about how, like, our feelings and our state of mind can change how we see the world,
But even if the intruder isn't real, the narrator still kills him. And that's a pretty violent act.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, Is he really defending himself? Or is there something else going on?
It's almost like he's trying to destroy the part of himself that's in so much pain.
It's like he's trying to silence the grief and the loss, like literally kill it.
And we only see everything from his point of view. We don't know what's objectively happening.
That's what makes the story so powerful. You're stuck in the narrator's head, experiencing everything through his eyes.
Which brings us back to the intruder's last words. Your best friend. I wanted to be a good boy. There's got to be something more to that, right?
Definitely. On the surface, it sounds like he's just begging for his life. But I think it also shows how much he wants to be loved, to be accepted. Almost like he's trying to take Apollo's place.
To be that companion the narrator's lost.
Exactly. But it's all twisted and messed up, and it ends in violence. It's like a warning about what can happen when grief takes over.
So in the end, the police find nothing. The narrator is left dealing with what he's done, and the dreams keep coming back. But now they're both happy and sad at the same time.
Yeah, it's like grief never really goes away. The story doesn't give you a happy ending. It just shows how loss stays with you, how it changes you.
It's a reminder that the scariest stories aren't always about monsters. They're about what's inside us, about the dark stuff that can happen in normal lives.
And for you listening, think about how this story, My Dog's Return, has changed how you think about grief and loss. Has it made you think about how our minds, how our feelings can affect the way we see the world?
This story, it's almost like it's working on different levels. You've got the actual plot, but then there's all this symbolism and like deep psychological stuff going on.
And the author does such a good job of blending it all together. Like you're caught up in the story, but then you also can't help thinking, what does this all mean? you know?
Yeah, totally. And there's so many different ways you could interpret it. Like you could look at it from a Freudian perspective, see the intruder as like repressed desires or anxieties, that kind of thing. Or maybe a Jungian perspective with all those archetypes, the shadow self and all that.
I think what really gets to me is how the story plays on this, like universal fear of the unknown, what we don't understand, what might be lurking in the shadows. It's like that instinct we all have to be afraid of the dark.
It's like those ancient myths and legends,
Yeah.
right? We make up stories to try to explain things that scare us, the things we can't control.
Exactly. And in a way, My Dog's Return is like a modern myth. It's a warning about what can happen when grief takes over, how easily our minds can break, and maybe even a hint that there are forces out there that we just can't comprehend.
It definitely stays with you. Makes you question what's real. Like, what would I do if I was in that situation? Could I handle it?
And that's what makes good horror, right? It's not just about being scared, it's about that feeling you get afterward, those questions that just keep nagging at you.
So for everyone listening, what's the biggest thing you take away from My Dog's Return? What stuck with you the most? The psychology, the grief, the supernatural stuff.
Think back on the story now with all these new ideas in mind. Notice the little things, the symbolism, the themes, and most importantly, ask yourself, what does this story say about being human? About how we see the world and about the darkness that might be inside all of us?
This has been, well, a pretty intense deep dive, but really fascinating too. My Dog's Return is one of those stories that you just can't put in a box. It's horror, it's psychological, there's even something kind of uncanny about it. It's definitely an experience that'll stay with you.
And the best stories, they make us think, make us question what we believe, make us face those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world. And sometimes in doing that, we find something really profound.